Every character should want something, even if it's only a glass of water. Kurt Vonnegut.
Or maybe not even a glass of water. Perhaps, say, a glass of battery acid? Let's roll this back a little bit. Hello there, and welcome back to that part of Video Essay YouTube. The part of YouTube where you see something titled, Scooby-Doo is an incel, and then you click on it, waiting to see when the punchline is going to be, until about halfway through when you realize, oh, she's not joking. And then the video turns out to be a banger. Hopefully I fulfilled that latter quality, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. For those of you who don't know what the hell is going on, let's start with Toby Fox, the creator of Undertale, which you may know as the game that gave us Sans Undertale, the character that won 2022's Tumblr Sexy Man of the Year competition, and the reason that the internet ruined blue popsicles forever. All jokes aside, Undertale was a huge success in indie gaming and a huge part of gaming culture in the 2010s, to the point that many people consider it one of the best games of all time. And it wasn't even the game that Toby Fox wanted to make. No. That game was Deltarune started life as a literal fever dream that Toby Fox had in 2011, one that gave him an idea for a game that Undertale was almost a test run for. So no, Deltarune is not Undertale 2. Even though it has some of the same characters, but they've got different relationships and lives and stuff. I don't know, something, the multiverse is infinite. Don't worry about it. Something that is the same between both games is that they're both very well written. It's honestly the main strength of these games, because while the art style is charming, people usually don't form dedicated fan committees for characters that are rendered in less than 200 pixels unless the writing behind them is really compelling. Though I suppose some corners of the internet will be interested in any character, no matter what, in some way or another. There are several fan favorite characters in Deltarune, from Ralsei to Susie to Noelle to Berdly to But one of these characters really stands out, at least in my opinion. The main antagonist of the second chapter, the living embodiment of internet culture, and possibly the funniest character ever created. Please give it up for the one, the only, serial number Q5U4EX7YY2E9N, aka Queen. And on that note, I think we're about due for a title card. Now, before we dive deep into this wild claim, we have to answer an important question. What exactly is Queen's deal? Well, she's not a child, nor is she a teenager, which are merely big children, and she's not even an adult, which are even bigger children. She is a computer. Smart. More specifically, she's a computer magically infused with the power of a dark fountain in order to give her life and personality. Even more specifically, she's used that life and personality to become the monarch of this cyber world, a dark world born out of the fusion of a dark fountain and the town library's computer lab. She seemed to rule with relative peace not long ago, but once the town's internet connection was disconnected, she apparently lost it and became far more tyrannical, in a complete reversal of the typical internet user's experience. Maybe being separated from her Twitter mutuals got her addicted to battery acid or something. Anyway, Queen now wants to use the power of lighteners, aka people from the real world, to make more dark fountains and make the whole world like the cyber world. And if none of that makes sense to you because you've never played Deltarune and don't know what lighteners or dark fountains are, then first of all, I'm not really sure why you're here. Second of all, go play Deltarune. And third of all, you're in luck because apparently Queen doesn't know a whole lot either, and has to have it explained to her that her shrouding the whole world in eternal darkness would be her doing an apocalypse. So once she realizes that, she backs off the plan immediately. Apparently, she genuinely thought that making the world a permanent internet state would make lighteners happy, showing that she really has no understanding of the typical internet user's emotional state. So that's the kind of person we're dealing with. Or computer, I guess. But yeah, that's Queen, a not super evil queen who somehow manages to turn the genuinely altruistic motive of bringing happiness everywhere into a aesthetically evil plan that involves mind control, kidnapping, roboticized faces, and a giant mech battle. So really, she would fit along great alongside a lot of MCU villains. But there's so much more to dig into her that it genuinely fascinates me, and it's why I'm willing to make the claim that she's a perfect character, or at least a very strongly written one. Generally, a good character has to have several strong goals, with at least one stated motivation and one unconscious motivation. And they have to have some sort of personality, or a collection of distinctive character traits and flaws. Let's start with the easy one. Queen is absolutely brimming with personality. From her laugh, to her unique way of speaking without punctuation, to her battery acid addiction, to her fascination with explosions, to the way her face lights up with several graphics, and to her absolute banger of a battle theme. Queen challenges, beats the shit out of, and spits on the corpse of the stereotype that computers have no personality. Honestly, she has enough personality that I could probably build my case on that alone. And even more honestly, that was what I was going to do when I set out making this video. But as I replayed the game and looked a lot more closely, I realized there was a lot more to Queen than meets the eye. My first big revelation is as follows. Queen is mom. Now you may be saying, TSD, that's not a big realization at all. Look at the way she dresses, look at the way she moves, the way she serves. Isn't it obvious that she's giving mother? And to that I say, calm down, son. It's just a pixel drawing. While I won't deny that Queen has a certain charisma to her, I was being a little bit more literal. To put it bluntly, now admittedly, this isn't a completely original idea that I came up with on my own or anything. There's a great video by the channel Kooky Autumn that takes a far more in-depth look at this idea, but my point is slightly different, I think. So I'll just summarize my thoughts here. More generally, Queen is a kind of allegorical mother figure in the story. Obviously, she's in charge of taking care of a lot of people as a queen, and she's a woman. So there we go, we did it. Gender essentialist interpretation of motherhood is complete. We can all go home now, right? Well, not exactly. A lot of Queen's other traits map onto stereotypically motherly traits as well. Notably, she seems to genuinely care about not only her own Darkner subjects, but also the Lightners and the kids who enter her world and thus are under her care. Her entire motivation, as previously mentioned, is to make everyone happy, which she plans to do by making the world like her own, i.e. the internet, which is a place that she has noticed Lightners tend to spend a lot of time in. Now the greater implications of this I'll delve into a little bit later, but it's telling that Queen's plan to bring happiness to everyone is to make it so that she can take care of everyone. Even the fucking Kris get the banana bit, which at first glance seems completely nonsensical, and honestly, probably is, and I think I'm just losing my grip on reality a little bit, plays into this idea. Because the reason that Queen gives for you to get the banana is simply potassium. But here's the thing. Queen is a computer. Computers, from what I can tell, don't really need potassium, but people do. In fact, it's a necessary ingredient for the core function of your cells. Queen is telling Kris to get the banana for the explicit reason that it's healthy and will provide an essential nutrient. If that isn't the most mom thing ever, I don't know what is. While Queen generally fits into a mom archetype, if a tad unconventionally, how she interacts with the main characters shows more about those characters' own parental relationships. More specifically, their trauma. The most obvious example is Noelle, whose relationship with Queen has a parallel with her own parentage that is so obvious that you could probably notice it if you played the game while the entirety of Attack of the Killer Beast was playing on loop in the background. Throughout the chapter, Queen has a particularly vested interest in Noelle. We see this interest shown through things like her being the first person that she captures, her trying the hardest to make Noelle her willing peon, forming truces with Kris until she can find Noelle, how she talks about how strong Noelle is when she thinks she isn't listening, and even her talking about wanting to create a world to allow Noelle to find happiness while she rains battery acid on you and tries to punch your giant robot mech with her own giant robot mech. However, she's also very overbearing and controlling and literally locks Noelle in a room to protect her. The final conflict is even resolved when Noelle stands up to Queen in a scene that very much feels like Noelle is talking to her mother. From what little we learn about Noelle's actual mom, the overly controlling and coddling mayor of the town in the real world, it starts to make sense why she'd feel that way. Especially since there seems to be an unresolved family tragedy involving Noelle's sister that may have given Noelle's mom a reason to be overprotective. There's clearly some very ripe allegorical trauma to be mined from analyzing these two characters' relationships. But that's just her relationship with Noelle. There are a whole other host of characters we can glean information from this way. Take, for example, the main player character, Kris. Kris is an interesting case because we see their mother figure in the game far more than we see Noelle's mom, which is to say that we see her at all. She's Toriel, one of several characters that this game borrows from Undertale in its weird, multiverse-shattering manner. Now, at the surface, Toriel seems like a perfect mother, and she is a great mother in many ways. At first, it may seem like Toriel and Queen are completely different, and in some ways they are. For example, Toriel is probably the most prim and proper character in the game, meanwhile Queen has lines like this. But there's also a lot of interesting similarities. Toriel is very doting, but as you may know, if you either had a parent or knew a friend who had a parent that was very doting, it can cross the line into being overbearing, especially when you're a teenager. Queen being so overbearing to Noelle reflects this, showing how she and Toriel are two sides of the same coin in that department. There's also the fact that while Toriel cares about Kris very much, she doesn't seem to take the opportunity to understand them and see them as anything other than Asriel's little sibling, Asriel being Kris's older brother who is currently off at college and not a sentient godlike being disguised as a flower.
Multiverse is a concept about which we know frighteningly little.
This surface level understanding is taken to an extreme with Queen, who literally says that she likes Kris because they do not do crazy things like have opinions. Have I mentioned how much I love Queen yet? There's also the interpretation that Queen's obsession with battery acid might be a reference to an implied problem that Toriel has with alcoholism, but I don't know how much credence that has, so I'm not going to place all my cards on it. The parallels between Toriel and Queen are definitely there though. Considering other characters, the next choice might be a bit of a surprise to you. Berdly. Yes, the pompous buffoon who tries to make up for his obvious lack of incredible intelligence with his extravagant vocabulary and posturing, and oh my god, I sound exactly like him, don't I? Well, that's something I may need to re-examine, but yes. You may wonder why I'm choosing to take a look at a character who seems to just be meant as antagonistic comic relief until you remember that this is a video about Queen, and I crossed that line long ago. Berdly's rather antagonistic relationship with Queen is as notable as it is funny. Throughout the chapter, we see Berdly actively vying for Queen's attention. Queen's reaction to this ranged from just ignoring and not caring about Berdly to actively avoiding him. It's really funny to see, and it acts as a kind of
Schadenfreude.
Okay. It's really funny to see and acts as a kind of schadenfreude when we know Berdly as the self-important prick he's acting like. However, there's a bit of a dark reason for this behavior. We learn from his telling of his backstory that he never received positive attention as a young child until he won a spelling bee, from which the praise he was given for being smart was so life-changing for him that he did everything he could to cultivate his image as a smart student, all with the help of Noelle. And like, what kind of relationship does someone have to have with their parents for a spelling bee to be the most amount of attention you've ever received? Through that lens, we can see Berdly's attempts to get Queen's attention and her role as a mother figure as a reflection of the attention-seeking behavior that Berdly is exhibiting by trying to seem smart. And Queen seems to be doing a pretty decent impression of his parents when she spells his name as Berdly. But it's probably not that serious. As Queen said, when it comes to Berdly, there's nothing wrong with him, he's just a little bit annoying. Now, the connection between Queen and Susie is a little bit less compelling than these other three, but there's still some interesting thoughts to be gleaned from said connection. Susie's home life is almost certainly troubled, what with obvious things like the problems she has coming to class, or her antisocial behavior towards other kids, to more subtle things, like her not calling her parents to let them know where she is when Toriel asks her to at the sleepover with Kris, or even her torn clothes. Taking this with her immediate hostility towards Queen, which is abnormal even for her, and again, Queen's role as a mother figure, it's possible that Susie may have some antagonistic feelings towards one or both of her parents. It's a bit of a loose connection, but it's still intriguing. And as for Ralsei, yeah, I got nothing. But this mother interpretation is incredibly strong, and I think it conveys one of the two main things that Toby Fox and co. were trying to get across, with Queen as an allegorical tool to learn more about the main characters. And if you're still not convinced, I've been saving my ace for this interpretation until now. She only plays mobile games. If that doesn't scream mom, I don't know what does. But you may likely be wondering, if I'm at the end of this mommy issues interpretation, why is there still so much of the video left? Well, that's because there's one other super important dimension to Queen's character that I've hinted at and made reference to, but never fully addressed. Now, this may seem obvious. Obviously, Queen is AI, she's a computer, and is referred to as such throughout the entire chapter. And hey, wait, Queen can't be the internet because the whole cyber world is the internet. There are references to social media and computer task windows and pop-up ads and spam. How can Queen represent all of that? Well, just pipe down and let me explain. Not that you have much choice in the matter. You're only a hypothetical straw man with no will of your own outside of me, only used as a figurative tool for the actual viewer who cannot interact with this video in any meaningful way. Except for liking and subscribing and commenting, of course. I think that from a certain perspective, Queen is the internet. At least metaphorically. It's tempting to think of this whole cyber world as the internet, but remember, the town has had its Wi-Fi cut off. The cyber world, as is just the computer lab and the library. Everything in it is an imprint of the internet, an echo. And Queen is kind of an amalgamation of all those echoes. One of Queen's defining characteristics is the way she speaks. It's really funny, but why? Why is the, let's call it creative, use of punctuation and more generally her use of language so humorous to us? Is it because we're people who grew up online or digital natives who had our senses of humor transformed by shitposters who spoke the exact same way that Queen does? Think about it. Queen essentially talks like a walking internet meme. Not in the way that cringy corporate advertising and out of a touch adults try to do, but through that lack of punctuation that you would see on like an old Yahoo Answers post. But that's just talking about how she speaks. What about how she thinks? What got me thinking about all of this was a line that Queen says right after she learns that her actions would bring about a potential apocalypse. I'm just a computer. Lamau, I don't know everything. Funny little line, right? It's a callback to when she called herself smarter than humans because she was a computer. Smart. But this really got me thinking about the implications.
If you think about the implications, promise me you'll think about the implications.
Okay, I promise.
Okay.
When we think about computers today, there's a certain context where everyone has been talking about them being smart, or even intelligent. And in that same context, there's been a lot of concern over the fact that just because these computer programs are intelligent, they don't know everything or even understand anything. That's right, I'm talking about AI.
You were right. I didn't think about the implications.
I will pull this back a little bit, however. This is not to say that Toby Fox is clairvoyant or that he predicted the rise of programs like DALL-E or ChatGPT back in 2021, though at this point I wouldn't put anything past him because he got the idea for this game through what was, for all intents and purposes, divine intervention. Or is it divine inspiration? I don't know. I will, however, say that Queen seems to be, on some level, a commentary on how our focus on automation and reliance on machines is giving something that doesn't really understand humanity the power to shape humanity. You ever hear the story about the chatbot that was trained on data purely pulled from Reddit and it became racist very quickly? Or did it pull from Twitter data and have the same effect? The answer is both. Both times. Both happened. They happened twice. And now it's not like either of these bots actually started believing the racist ideology or like incorporated it into their data set that people of color were inferior or whatever. They were just reading the data and identifying patterns among posts that received the most engagement. And lo and behold, those posts tended to be the most controversial and bigoted ones. We can see a kind of similar phenomenon in Queen. During the same sequence that gave us the ever iconic Kris get the banana line, Queen remarks that people in the real world must love traffic because, quote, they look it up all the time. It's funny, but it's also the same logic that dictates her plan. People spend a lot of time online, so therefore they must be happy when they're online. So therefore everyone would be happy if they were online all the time. It's showing that she really is working from a very limited data set and is making decisions based purely on logic that is built from that data set. She doesn't have human intuition, which is an issue when she's trying to warp the very fabric of the world based off of her understanding of humanity's wants and needs. It gives us some context as to why you should probably side-eye anyone who suggests that we should let AI run important things like the economy in its current state. But sure, you're not convinced about the AI connection. That's fair. We can take that same logic and apply it to the whole of the internet, which AI is a part of. That same idea of the tool that has the possibility and even intentions of doing good, but because of limited perspective doesn't achieve anything actually helpful in practice. That could apply to AI tools, but it could also apply to social media. Social media started as... Well, social media as we know it started as a way for Mark Zuckerberg to rate the attractiveness of people at Harvard, but ostensibly social media as a whole is built to help bring people together. And it certainly does that, at least. We've all heard stories about social media bringing together like-minded people, whether it be fans of a piece of media, people who work in similar fields, or even social justice advocates. And less fun cases of bringing together like-minded people like certain members of politically extreme movements and conspiracy theorists, which definitely has had its consequences. And without even diving into the politically extreme end of these things, how many times have we seen the story of social media and social platforms being used to utterly ruin the day, year, or even life of someone, often over a relatively minor transgression? It's not every case, obviously. Some of these people do heinous shit and, deserve to be called out for that. But it's alarming how often the response is incredibly overblown. And a lot, if not most of these cases, people are trying to do good. They're just not considering the implications.
Oh my god, I didn't think about it!
All this is to say that Queen, being an internet-themed villain who uses the very powerful tools at her disposal in order to try to fix an issue with massively devastating unforeseen consequences, is a lot more resonant than you might think at first glance. There are some other smaller parallels there as well, related to her desire to make everything the internet all of the time. Sorry about that. Queen makes a comment about how Lighteners are, quote, already enslaved by her and her kin, staring, tapping to receive joy, and staring, tapping to avoid pain. It sounds like what users would seem like from the perspective of a social media algorithm. And famously, most social media algorithms' main goal is to keep people on that social media for as long as possible. So really her plan is a reasonable escalation of that. If we use a similar but slightly different social media parallel, Queen posts her face basically everywhere. She's on ads, on her own attacks, her robot mech is a giant version of her, and her face even opens the game when you start Chapter 2. Could this possibly be a nod to the idea of people online posting their faces everywhere? Especially the more influencer-minded people? I'll let you be the judge of that. And finally, there's the digital native parallel. All of the kids in this game are definitely of the age that they would have grown up with the internet. The fact that they were effectively raised by the internet, in some cases more than others, Berdly definitely spent a lot of time on Reddit. Don't even try to argue that with me. Could be a reason why Queen feels the need to take care of them. That's right, I'm bringing it back around to the mom thing. It's not like you can stop me. Though she does mind control some of the kids to make them fight the other kids, so really she's not a perfect parent, just like the internet. Parents, don't let your kids on the internet before they're 13. Throughout this video, I have taken you on a journey of mommy issues, ChatGPT, and potassium. But how does this answer my main claim? How does this all make Queen a perfect character? Isn't that a subjective determination? Isn't the last half hour of actual character analysis enough to prove that, at least objectively, Queen is a funny, well-written, and compelling character all on her own? Is that not enough? Well, I'm here to tell you that no! Art is dead and it's all a numbers game. I can prove objectively that Queen is a perfect character, and I will with science. Now, we must evaluate this claim according to this Purdue article, and since Purdue is a university, it must be an objective source on character writing. There's a lot in here about flavor text and physical detail, and trying to avoid making shit up about real people. But the key takeaways are what I outlined earlier. Several strong goals, with at least one stated motivation and one subconscious motivation, and they have to have a personality, or a collection of distinctive character traits and flaws. We already know Queen has a personality. She loves explosions and talks like a YouTube commenter. Literally the perfect woman. She's also got so many goals, like drinking the acid tunnel of love or roboticizing Noelle's face because it seems cool. She's got a strong stated goal, shrouding the world in darkness to make the Lightners happy, and she's got a strong subconscious goal, taking care of Noelle and trying to help her reach her full potential. She's got a strong thematic role as a single mom who works 2 jobs, those 2 jobs being the ruler of the cyberworld and professional acid taster, and as an allegory for the AI revolution and the internet's grip on our very souls. She's got a killer-ass boss theme, and all around is just a model of everything you want to see in a role model for evil geniuses. What an icon. What more can you really ask for in a character? Compelling character drama? Who needs compelling character drama when you've got a giant robot mech? Yeah, that's what I thought. Joking aside, Queen is genuinely such a great character to dig into, and I hope that you got a lot out of the genuine and interesting analysis that we went through, which ideally is the majority of this video, but I don't know. I'm constantly astounded by Toby Fox's writing, and the fact that a comedic antagonist with maybe 45 minutes of screen time has this much to dig into is really something special, and it just gives me a far greater appreciation for his work and his character writing. And honestly, I don't think there's a better compliment I can give. To end this video on, anyway. I can probably think of much better compliments on a variety of subjects for a variety of different people. So, thank you so much for watching this video. I have no idea if this video was actually good or not, or if I was just documenting a slow, nervous breakdown, but I think that either option will be entertaining. Feel free to check out my socials, including my channel Discord server, which are all linked down below, as well as the link to my Patreon page. If you want to help support me and the channel, feel free to consider donating. At the lowest tier, you get early access to all videos, private access to the Patreon community page, the ability to vote on Patreon exclusive polls, and your name in the credits of every single one of my videos. Thank you so much to all my patrons, and if you can't or don't want to join the Patreon but you still want to support the channel, feel free to like the video, comment with any thoughts you may or may not have had, share the video with anyone you think might like it, or even just subscribe for more of that sweet, sweet content. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this video and that I made your day just that little bit better. And I guess I'll see you in the next video. Bye. They look it up all the time. Oh my god. More specifically, she's a computer infused... Oh my god. Are you kidding me? Oh my god. It's very pretty, but why now? Out of all the times